All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Destination the Show, episode 3. Thank you guys for checking us out. If you're brand new, welcome to the show. My name is Jamie Cameron. Here we are covering all things prospects, minor leagues, and MLB draft for the Twins, Brewers, and Cubs. Here with my guy Jeremy Nygaard. Jeremy, how are you doing? What's up and what's new?
I'm doing pretty good. But we'll see how my equipment works tonight, right? Uh, and then we'll go from there, and hopefully it's better than it was last week and better than it was 5 minutes ago.
Amen. Amen. This is take 2. I'm excited that we are recording today and not tomorrow because I'm headed to the Minnesota State Fair tomorrow, and I cannot wait.
What are you gonna eat?
I'm gonna eat all of it, Jeremy. Everything.
All of it.
All of it. Um, I'm not discriminate when it comes to a once a year state fair trip. So I'd like to try some of the new things. Seems like there's a big pickle theme this year, which I don't know how I feel about, but we'll see how it goes. How about you? Are you a state fair aficionado, or is that like your? I feel like crowds are maybe your nightmare, but maybe I'm wrong.
um, I don't love lots of people, but there is beer there, and
It's
that
true.
makes it a little bit better. The mistake that my wife and I have made is that we brought the youngest with, and
Oh no.
it was a disaster. So I
Oh,
said he was never going to go back again, and that might be the reason that we never go back. Plus, we
there you
start
go.
school early,
Uh,
which kind of eliminates the weekday trip, which I think is much easier than the weekend trip. So
agreed.
probably not going to happen this year, but I don't know.
Right on. No, this is a no kids zone. Um, all right, enough food chat. Here's what we're going to dig into today. We're going to start off with our third and final 2023 draft review. That's going to be the Milwaukee Brewers saved the best for last. We're going to do a high level, really high level, 30,000 foot overview of the 2024 draft class because people have been asking about it. We'll dig into some listener questions kind of woven in throughout and then finish up with some news and notes. But before we do all that, some real quick housekeeping. Friendly reminder, we are now on Twitter at DTS underscore pod1. Please drop us a follow. We are sharing everything from the show there. When we get more proficient, we will share clips from the show there also. Because we're a multi-team podcast covering 3 major league organizations, you'll be able to find timestamps in the episode descriptions from now moving forwards so you can plug directly into the content for your team, whether that's Cubs, Brewers, or Twins. Always looking for feedback as we find our feet here. So share with us what you like, share with us what you're looking for in future episodes. A pretty good chance we will work to make it happen. And lastly, but not least, if you enjoyed what you heard, because you're not going to enjoy what you see, we'd appreciate if you leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to the Twins Daily YouTube channel. Those are easy ways and free ways to help us grow the show, reach more people, and improve as we go. All right, Jeremy, are you ready to talk Milwaukee Brewers 2023 draft class?
I am.
Okay. Before we do a quick review here, um, let's start with your big takeaway. If you were kind of explaining this draft class to someone who had never seen the names, didn't know anything about the prospects, how would you tell them that the Brewers did? What are your kind of high level takeaways here?
So I think the big takeaway here is that the Brewers did a great job spreading out their bonus pool,
Mm-hmm.
spending into their tax, and getting a ton of high upside players. Again, high upside is a thing, right? Um, but I thought it was a really well done draft,
Mm-hmm.
and um, it'll take 5-6 years to know how well they actually did it. But I
Yep.
think the early returns are positive returns.
Yep. Yep. And we talked last week, man, about how, we did this kind of updated minor league farm system rankings, and the Brewers were consensus top 5. I think it's probably fair to say that they were a consensus top 5 favorite draft class of most industry folks also. Is that something you would stand behind as well, or not that high on it?
Yeah, no, I think I like I said last week, I always kind of tend to lean upside, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm gonna go that way because that's kind of the way that they were able to go. And part of that strategy might have been because they already had a strong system, right? So you're not really trying to supplement your close to the major guys with necessarily a lot more of close to the major guys. The next wave is already kind of established.
Yep.
We've seen it with guys that have been promoted this year. We've seen it with guys that are top 5 prospects globally. And you can take a whole bunch of shots at the dartboard with guys like Cooper Pratt, and those that are going to have an opportunity to be really, really, really good players. They're just a long way from being those players.
Mm-hmm. Agreed with the overview, agreed with the kind of broad brush strokes here. Before we dig into kind of specific picks and talk shop, let's do a quick high-level overview. So the Brewers picked at number 18 overall. Bonus pool wise, they came in at 10.95 million, 12th most money in the majors, so roughly middle of the pack. Here's a very quick recap of some of their notable and significant selections. Just going to do 6 or 7 guys, and I'm going to specifically highlight what they were paid in relation to slot, because I think it's going to kind of tee up the next part of our conversation here. So round 1, 18th overall, Brock Wilken, third baseman out of Wake Forest, close to $1 million under slot. Competitive balance round A, 33rd overall. They selected Josh Knoth, a prep right-handed pitcher from the Northeast, $500,000 under slot. Round 2, 54th overall, Mike Bovey, third baseman out of University of Omaha, Nebraska, $300,000 under slot. Round 3, 87th overall, Eric Bitonti, an absolutely massive power-hitting shortstop, we'll call him infielder, prep infielder from California, close to $1 million over slot there. 4th round, 119th overall, Jason Woodward, a right-handed pitcher out of Florida Gulf Coast, $300,000 under slot. 5th round, 155 overall, Ryan Burchard, a right-handed pitcher out of JUCO. Brewers love a JUCO guy. He was close to slot. Round 6, in what I feel like safe in saying this one was the surprise of the entire draft. 182nd overall, Cooper Pratt, prep shortstop, close to $1 million over slot. And then round 7, pick 212, Tate Kuhner, a left-handed pitcher out of Louisville, $170,000 under slot. So really leaning into manipulating the money and their bonus pool in a way that I think is like almost unique. Jeremy, what did you make of the Brewers' approach? How would you kind of characterize their strategy and their choices in this draft?
Yeah, so I think the important thing too to mention is you stopped at round 7, because in rounds 8, 9, and 10, the Brewers signed guys for very, very, very small amounts of money to save money for their bonus pool. And so the approach was to save money on some picks, to spend big on other picks. Now, how that strategy all comes together on draft night, you got to have more than one guy that you like, right? Because otherwise it's just not gonna work. And I think we can get more into that on their day 3 picks to see how that kind of works. But their approach was, like you said, unique in that they didn't really play it the way that it should go, where your first pick is making the most, then your second, then your third. They have it all kind of mixed up, and I haven't gone through to figure it out, but I would guess they kind of bonus themselves some picks by being able to go higher with guys like Cooper Pratt and then guys later too. So their approach was interesting, and to make it work, um, kudos to their draft room for pulling it off. Kudos to their area scouts for knowing what these guys would sign for, because I don't think Cooper Pratt signing what his figure was at, I don't think other teams figured it was going to be as low as it was.
Yep. And I feel like the bonus money is going to come back and be a theme throughout this whole discussion, because I remember tweeting a bunch of times on draft night and thereafter, just basically variations on a theme, which was like, how the hell are the Brewers going to pay for all of these guys that they drafted with Bitonti, with Pratt, with Knoth as well? And they did it. And some notable picks later that they managed to sign too. So incredible amount of creativity and kudos to the front office for making that happen. Okay, let's dig into some specific picks, man. I'm gonna barrage you with questions about Brock Wilken, slugging, massive, power hitting third baseman from an extremely fun college World Series finalist Wake Forest team. What did you think of the pick at 18? How's he doing so far? And I'm always going to throw in this kicker for you, which is, would you have considered anyone different were you making that pick?
Yeah, so to start with that question, I think it's hard to look from the perspective of the team strategy in the moment that they're drafting, because you don't know what's going to happen next. Like, if you could have told me, hey, if you take Wilken here and then you can get a bunch of prep guys all the way to round 20, it's an excellent pick. At the time when they made that pick, I'm like, ooh, maybe a slight reach. But whenever that feeling occurs, it's okay, now let's wait to see what they do next. And the Knoth pick, it was like, oh, okay. And then as it moved on, it made sense. And then there's the snowball of how are they going to get that done? And they were able to. So at the time, I didn't love the Wilken pick for the Brewers because I thought it was a little bit of a reach. But it was the way that it worked out to get him batting about 287. I think is he at high A right now?
Yep. And we're about to watch a video of him, I think, here for high A Wisconsin, maybe.
Yeah, Timber Rattlers.
Yeah.
And so he's got power. He's gonna probably profile, if he can stay at third base, great. Otherwise, if he moves across the diamond, but I don't think that's terrible. But he fits in to a really strong system and isn't a top 100 prospect type yet. Probably fits more towards the back half of their top 10, which I think is fine. That says more about the status of that system than it does say about Wilken as a prospect.
Agreed. All right, here's the two things I'm going to say about Wilken real quick. And I'm going to throw out one name for you as a name of someone I thought the Brewers might consider. So the one comment on Wilken's performance so far that I think is notable is high A, he made short work of rookie ball. And carried an OPS north of 1,000 there. So he was quickly promoted up to high A. Here's the thing that I think is notable. Hasn't shown a ton of power yet at high A, but what was really notable about his last season at Wake was he suddenly had this surge in his on-base percentage, and his swing's a little stiff, and folks wondered at the time, was he a little too passive at the plate? What would often happen is, because he's such a huge power threat, guys would pitch around him. But better pitchers would quickly throw him 2 strikes, and then that would kind of allow them to get to their nasty breaking stuff against him. But the thing I think is notable for Wilken so far is in a limited sample at high A. What is that? 80 at bats we're at. He's carrying a 420 on base percentage so far. So I think, the basic criticism was like, is he going to learn to be a little more aggressive? Is he going to be able to maintain that plate discipline? Early indications are really good there. How about this for an alternative name? Braden Taylor was a guy that went, I think, a pick later to the Tampa Bay Rays. He was a guy I'd kind of highlighted as a Brewers-y pick here, a kind of high-floored college player. Of course, your point is a great one that like the bonuses play a massive part here, especially for the Brewers. I guess he's the only guy I maybe would have considered and thought the Brewers might like in that slot at 18. Thoughts? Agree? Disagree?
Well, yeah. So I just pulled that up quick, and Wilken signed for 3.15, and Taylor signed for 3.88.
Okay.
So, I mean, it could have been a conversation where they liked them both similarly, and the money was the tiebreaker. Because then Namala signed for less than that. Aiden Miller signed for about the same.
Yeah.
That would have been a fun pick for the Brewers to make at the same price. And that's really how you kind of have to look at things. Like, with that amount of money at that same price, guys still on the board that signed for that or less, are there other names? And there's there certainly are names like Hurston Waldrop for $3 million even. Why not?
Like, who's killing it? Killing it.
And that was a name that I think you and I both would have agreed that we thought was going to go in the teens.
Yeah. 100%.
Right?
We wrote up Hurston Waldrop for like every team we possibly could at the time. I think just because we were kind of obsessed with him.
Yeah, and I think if the Twins, I mean, obviously the Twins taking him where they took Walker Jenkins would have been crazy. But him going anywhere from really, if you think about it, 9, but even louder, going, if he would have been the first pitcher off the board, maybe that would have been crazy. Anywhere after Lauder at 8 to dropping all the way down to 24. Yep. And so I think that's the type of thing that you look at and you think, well, would I have done that? Yeah, I would have done that night. I would still do it. But the Brewers had their sights set on certain guys and were able to pull it off. And could their draft have been better in hindsight? Yeah, but given what we know, I really liked it. Moving on to the second pick that they made, a guy that I wrote up because he was intriguing to me was comp A pick Josh Knoth. Tell me everything you can about him.
Yeah, man. He's one of every draft nerd's favorite guys. I think, like, along with Joe Whitman, who I think you brought up last week. Joe Whitman, he was like the college helium arm. Josh Knoth was like the prep helium arm of this draft cycle. I remember finishing up the first consensus board, which was like April. He wasn't on it, and that was the top 100 at the time. And then suddenly he was like 70th overall out of nowhere. And then suddenly where he ended up, I think right around top 50 range, top 55 type of guy. So they picked him a little above his consensus kind of ranking, and that kind of aligns, with their 500,000 under slot for him. Northeast prep pitcher. Pretty common for Northeast prep kids to be a little bit buried because the weather is worse. Not as many opportunities to see them. Season tends to start earlier in warmer places. So a Northeast prep pitcher, committed to Ole Miss, just really, really dominant throughout his senior season. A little bit undersized, but really good velocity, like fastball, 95 to 97 range. We're about to watch some footage of him now. Nice, compact, repeatable delivery. I think like the thing that his like standout trait is incredible ability to spin the baseball. He has just a absolutely nasty breaker. But all of that together, and the comps for him is kind of like a Lance McCullers type of a profile. I don't believe he's pitched yet. I think he is a really intriguing, exciting prospect who Brewers fans are going to want to track closely heading into 2024. Josh
so
Knoth, one of our faves.
Before we move forward here, the draft from picks 33 through 38 were really intriguing to me because it went Knoth at 33 for $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
So Charlie Soto to the Twins at 34 for 2.48.
Mm-hmm.
I would take Knoth for two over Soto for 2.48. Then Tommy White, the best lefty in the draft, best prep lefty in the draft, signs at 35 for 4.1 million.
So much. So much money.
Would you rather have 2 Josh Knoths or 1 Thomas White?
100% to Josh Knoth. I was
Right.
shocked by the Thomas White. I knew he was going to be expensive, but I maybe didn't think he was going to be that expensive. Also, low-key, word on the street is that the Dodgers were planning on taking him, and they got scooped by the Marlins, who also took Noble Meyer with their first pick and just went prep, like potential superstar arm, because that's what they do. And that was a really interesting first day that they had. But yeah, the Thomas White bonus was high. I knew he was going to be expensive. Didn't think it was that much. Love the Knoth figure, and would take Charlie Soto over Thomas White at that price for that matter too.
So the other name then, Ty Floyd, LSU at 38 to the Reds for 2.1 million.
Yep.
So Knoth for 2, Ty Floyd for 2.1. I mean, Ty Floyd had some. There was some talk that he was going to sneak into the first round.
Yep.
And so just those 4 guys, they won't always be forever tied together, but they kind of could be, because White's getting twice as much as those guys.
Yep.
And I don't know if all things are even, if you even take you probably take White first, but not that much for that much more.
Yeah. I don't know. I think White's performance in the back half of his prep season was a little uneven. So I'm not even convinced. I mean, Ty Floyd, I thought he was going to be a fit with the Braves, where they picked. He was like this year's Cade Horton, right? Like standout performer down the stretch. He had that ridiculous game in the College World Series where he struck out 16 or 17. It was just wild. P.S. I know this isn't under our kind of in our area code, but if we want to talk about nice drafts, the Reds are also worthy of being mentioned, getting Red Lauter and Ty Floyd and Sammy Stafora. Anyway, we digress. Let's talk about some other notable Brewers picks. I think the 2 that we got to touch on are rounds 3 and round 6. So Eric Bitonti, round 3, a power hitting prep shortstop. I got to stop saying shortstop. Infielder out of California. 1.75 million bonus, close to $1 million over slot. And then Cooper Pratt in the 6th round, prep shortstop for 1.3 million. That was close to $1 million over slot. How the hell did they pull that off, Jeremy?
Well, I think they shaved some money off with their first 3 picks. Not a ton, $1 million, $500,000, 300,000. And then as soon as they took Bitonti, I think it was like, okay, we still have a little bit of more money. We have a little bit more to play with. If we shave a lot more off from rounds 8, 9, and 10, we can do some crazy things. So Bitonti in round 3, who's going to be, you say infielder, he's third base, maybe
be something,
right? So you have Wilken, who's like third base, maybe. Bitonti, third base, maybe. Cooper Pratt should stay at shortstop, but 6'4", that doesn't always work. Could he be a third baseman? Maybe. And Mike Bovee, third baseman. Which, going back to the Brock Wilken pick, makes taking Hunter Waldrop an even better choice for me there.
Yeah.
But they were able to do it because they shaved money off rounds 8, 9, and 10. and they shaved money off round 7, and they shaved money off round 4, who's another intriguing pick. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But when you're creative with that money and the guys are falling, and again, credit to the area scouts, because they have to know what the price tag is. And that's what they've told me. They're like, if you want to know what that job's like, it's like a college recruiter, where you have to go in and sell your program, your team, and then have them say, yeah, we'll sign for you for X amount of dollars. And so that to me is just a credit to the Brewers getting it done, their front office.
Yep. Soup. I can believe it. So let me throw something out there that's a real quick, because I think this is fascinating. Like a wild draft night conspiracy theory that was going around that I found believable. And let me see what you make of this. I'm putting you on the spot here. So they took Bitonti in the 3rd round. The rumor mill, so he signed for 1.75. The rumor mill was circulating that he wasn't going to sign for anything less than 2.5. Okay. So my wondering at the time was, dang, maybe they took Bitonti and Cooper Pratt as like their backup in case they can't get Bitonti over the line. They still have like a high caliber prep guy that they know they can sign, and they're guaranteed at least one of the two if they run into signability issues with Bitonti. Is that just crazy, or do you think there's any merit to things that disorganized happening on draft day or during draft weekend?
I mean, if they were afraid that they weren't going to be able to sign, if they thought 1.75 or 2, and his pick value was about 800,000, that they were going to have that extra million, they had to be really confident what Cooper Pratt was going to sign for. And that goes back to having those numbers. And how does it work out? You know, because we got to experience the Walker Jenkins situation firsthand, where they sat and they, you know, it was about, we're going to get the bonus, we're going to get you into the tax. No, we're not going to do the tax. And so I guess the Brewers had a little bit more cushion, right? A little more leeway, because there was no certainty that they'd go right up to that limit. And so they could finalize things with a little bit of, you know, there was the gray area, and the Twins didn't have that. So I think, you know, you always have to have a backup plan, even if the plan is really solid, where Bitonti is going to sign for 1.75 million. If he doesn't sign, you have to have other guys to throw money at. And I think the Brewers had the money, and then had other guys lined up, and effectively were able to throw money at lots of dudes. But you know, Bitonti and Pratt both, they're high upside guys, but they're, you know, 12 to 15 range for the Brewers. And those are the types of players that, if the Brewers, you know, they've traditionally been a pretty successful team, right? Competing for the playoffs or making it to the playoffs. That next year, when they're looking to shore up maybe a pitching staff or maybe getting another hitter, they can look down into their wealth of prospects and deal from potentially this group,
for sure,
or, you know, a different group. But these guys are going to be high value players, because once they're under contract for what they're under contract for, now they're just prospects, and they're high upside prospects.
Yep. And that's one of the things I love about the Brewer system, man. They've compiled this incredible group in all kinds of ways. Jackson Churio, international signing. Jacob Mizorowski, JUCO guy. Strong drafts. They really killed it. And yeah, Bitonti and Pratt for sure. The two upside guys in rounds 3 and 6 respectively. Okay, we're gonna continue a theme from the past 2 weeks. We're each gonna pick a prospect from kind of the mid rounds and then the later rounds to highlight say a little about that prospect, what is intriguing about them. So we'll start with the mid rounds 3 through 10 first. Who's your guy?
All right, so my choice is the 4th round pick. So Jason Woodward is a pitcher that the Brewers selected round 4, and so not the super intriguing pick in that he's a prep guy, but intriguing in that he is kind of unknown, right? So they were able to go under slot, get a pitcher, the upside of being a starter, throwing it hard, and has a good breaking ball, but there's all sorts of questions with the health. So he's not going to throw this year. Who knows when he throws next year? But the Florida Gulf Coast thing, there's always going to be this like, oh, hey, yeah, the Florida Gulf Coast, they've produced a Hall of Fame pitcher, eventually. And so is Woodward going to ever be Chris Sale? No. But is he always going to be mentioned in that same breath because he's from Florida Gulf Coast? Yeah. And so it might turn out to not work, but it's a low risk, high reward potential pick for them. So to get that high school guy and then to take a high upside college arm too. Again, like I said, I've always tend to lean upside, and that's why to me that pick is so intriguing in round 4.
Nice, like it. I'm gonna go with their 7th round pick, 212 overall, Tate Kuhner, left-handed pitcher out of Louisville. Less so for the kind of prospect tools and more so as like a product of their overall strategy, right? So like he was a senior sign, he got a $72,000 bonus for a $242,000 slot. So the discussion we had about like how on earth are they doing this with the high ceiling prep guys? Well, picks like Tate Kuhner are the reason why. He is an example of how they pay for everyone else. He is just like a solid college performer from a good school as a lefty who both started and relieved. They drafted him in tandem with another lefty named Mark Manfredi in the 9th round. Only just got started. 3 innings in the Arizona Complex League. Gave up 2 hits and a walk, struck out 2. A lot of their mid-round guys haven't actually debuted yet, but just I think a good example of the Brewers' financial strategy in action, but they also find guys still, even on these reduced deals, who are useful organizational contributors, even while playing this kind of manipulation game with their bonus pool.
So one thing before we move on, when we talked about Pratt and Bitonti just before, MLB has those guys sandwiched around last year's 1st round pick as just a reference for where they fit in the prospect rankings. Eric Brown hasn't been great this year, but he's 13 months removed from being a 1st round pick, and that's where their 3rd and 6th round picks are this year. So just to give kind of an idea of how high profile those guys are, because like I said, 12 to 15 range, that's still good in a really good system.
Yep. Okay. And I mean, if we also want to like put them in the I think another one final word on that. If you put those guys in the context of this year's draft class and use a consensus board as a tool, it's absolutely ridiculous what the Brewers were able to accomplish. Like we know, talked about it a lot. This draft was the best draft since 2011. Yada yada yada. Eric Bitonti was the consensus 54th prospect in an extremely strong and deep top 75, and Cooper Pratt was the consensus 58th prospect, and the Brewers got those guys in the 3rd and 6th round. That is just absolutely wild.
And so now all these guys that we talked about after that, our 2 picks from day 2 intrigue, and these picks from day 3 intrigue. These are not top 30 prospects in the system.
Yep.
So there's a significant gap here between those guys and these other guys in the top 10 rounds, specifically the ones we're talking about.
Yep. Yep.
Right. Okay. So we've talked about our day 2 intriguing picks. Why don't you kick off the a day 3 intriguing pick?
I'm so glad. I had to on the running order. I had to manipulate this, so my pick was first because I didn't want you to steal mine. All right, mine is 11th rounder, Bishop Letson. Another really high upside prep pick, signed for close to 500,000. So it was expensive. But again, consensus value. He's like a top 200 type prospect in this draft. I think, if my memory serves, I'm in the right range. MLB Pipeline had him at like 175 ish, 177 overall. 6'4", fastball 694 and 95 miles per hour. Committed to Purdue. I think we're going to get to see some video of him throwing a bullpen here. One of the top prep arms in the Midwest in this draft. Just another great example. This video is from February. Producer Theo tells us another great example of the Brewers pulling out all the stops to sign really high upside prep pitchers. This is a guy who'll move slow, but another really intriguing name to track, and someone who has a shot in a couple of years at being a dude.
Yep.
So Bishop Letson is mine.
You were way off. He was 179.
Close enough. Close enough.
MLB's Pipeline, and I was wrong. I said these guys wouldn't be top 30. He's actually 26th.
Yes.
So
okay.
the thing that's interesting about when day 3 kicks off, like everybody and their brother thought the Brewers have spent all their money, right?
Yep.
So they're going to take from the pool of guys we can give 150,000 to. Bishop Letson goes off the board, and it was like, how are they going to pay him? And a lot of times maybe a round 11 guy is someone that's not going to get paid. He's the backup plan, or the backup's backup plan. And then for the rest of the rounds, the rest of the day, it's the same thing over and over, right? So I picked round 20, Justin Chambers.
Nice.
20th round. I don't know if he was in the if he was one of the let me look here. Top left-handed pitching prospect in Arizona. And so Tommy John has some elbow surgery. Mm-hmm. He's not listed at MLB's top whatever. Was he on your board?
Nope.
So left-handed, 6'2", just turned 18. So 17-year-old when drafted. So here we're going to get to watch him throw left-handed. He's got the flow going, right?
Yep.
We got that.
You love to see it.
And so bought out of a commitment to Washington State. And again, going to have to be patient with him because he's going to have to rehab an elbow. And you can afford to do that in a system that's really, really deep. And then they turn around and they give him $547,000 as a 20th round pick. I mean, that's top 3 round money, right?
Brewers are fun, man. I love it. I love it. That's really fun. I mean, we just took the opposite ends of the final day, rounds 11 through 20, and highlighted guys that both got $500,000. Okay, last word. Here's your opportunity. Last word on the Brewers draft. What's your takeaway? What's your headline? Final thought. Jerry's final thought.
Loved it. Thought it was for me the best draft. If not, it was the personal favorite. I think best draft. You think that's too strong. Loaded with upside. Upside always comes with risk. So the hit rate might not be great, but the ability for some of these guys, or potential for some of these guys to hit big, is there. Whenever you can add 6 prep pitchers and 4 prep hitters or whatever it was, that might be a little high. That's a really intriguing draft, even if it turns out to not be super successful. How about you?
I'm not willing to go that far, but it's more because I'm too much of a fence sitter because I didn't love it. I did love it 100%. I really love their draft strategy, their risk. I would call it like calculated risk taking, how they manipulate their bonus pool. I think they're great with it. There's other drafts I really like too. I like the Reds. I like the Diamondbacks. There's a few others that are great, and it's really like grading MLB drafts is just like a mess. The Brewers had an amazing draft. They really know what they're doing with talent ID and development. And so not only do I love the picks, but I also trust that the organization knows what to do with them. And I think this farm system that we broke down a little bit last week, and we'll do more as we get more into more episodes here, is not only without question a top 5, but it's going to be that way for quite a long time. So I loved it. It was great.
Okay, so now we're going to move on, and this is going to be fun for both of us.
Yes.
Because we're going to go on record doing something that's probably really, really stupid to do.
That's definitely stupid.
In August of the year prior. So we're going to flip the page right now, and we're going to move on and start talking about next year's draft class, the 2024 draft class. And usually it's like the top names are not the top names 9 months later. So right now, where we sit, August 30th, tell us a little more about the 2024 class compared to the 23 class.
Yeah, so you're right. This is dumb. This is not a good idea, but we're going to do it anyway. And I think it is actually like a useful thought exercise, because we'll get to see how this conversation, we're going to have this conversation every month, and we're going to get to see how this changes over time. We got to do a little context setting before we talk about 2024 directly, and just reground some folks in 2023 and why it was so outstanding, because I think that's really important. Because 2023, what everyone knows, it was a great draft class, but it's important to know and understand why. So rewind to COVID. Rewind to COVID 2020. The draft is shortened that year to 5 rounds. And there's a massive knock-on effect there for high school prep prospects, which is that like there's 5 rounds, not that many prospects are going to be picked. So the outcome of that is that a ton of really promising prep prospects go to college, and that kind of creates this incredible talent bloat. And kids that go to college are usually draft eligible after their junior year, or if they're 21 as a sophomore. And so what you have is this college class that's like buoyed by COVID and this COVID shortened draft in 2020. And we then combine that with a really exceptional prep class this year. So I also want to set it on the backdrop of like 2023 was not normal. Even a good draft class doesn't look like 2023. This is like a once every 10 years type of a deal. So you better hope your team picked well. So we're going to, instead of doing questions at the end, we're going to kind of fold some in here. Twins Takes on Twitter, thanks for shooting some questions our way, asks, what are the overall strengths of this draft class coming up? Any players in particular you're paying attention to? So let's talk demographics. So the way I like to think about draft classes firstly is like, let's start with prep and college. Both prep and college classes in 2024 are going to be significantly weaker than their 2023 counterparts. Even though you just gave that great spiel about like, this is too early and we're going to look foolish, which we are, and it is, I feel pretty confident saying that. There are some really interesting demographics though. Catching was absolutely barren in the 2023 draft. I think we had Kyle Teal and Blake Mitchell, and then Michael Carrico were the only consensus top 100 catchers, 3 guys. There's a ton of interest in catching, both prep and college, coming up in 2024. So that's one demographic I would pay attention to. The other one I would pay attention to, or I am paying attention to early, is college pitching. And when we're in August of the year before, I'm always going to highlight college players over prep players because it's like these prep guys aren't even going to look the same next year. But college pitching has the potential to be really, really interesting, and we'll dig into some names in a second. So let's answer the second part of Twins Takes question. Who are some prospects that you're interested in tracking or that folks should pay attention to during the prep or college seasons? And like, you can go anywhere with this because when we get into the draft cycle, we're going to do like position by position, but we're going to be absolutely insufferable. So anywhere you want to go, who are some names that people need to know?
So yeah, first name for me is Vance Honeycutt. And I think if we would have done a 2024 draft preview a year ago, the two names that I'm picking are probably the names that would have been 1 and 2. And so Vance Honeycutt, outfielder from North Carolina, he teases all the tools of being a potential 5 tool, 1-1, build your franchise around him. But there's also enough that makes you go, is he going to hit, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a kind of a big deal. And we've seen it in the past where that's a big question mark, and that sometimes takes a long time to develop. Was it like 2,000 minor league at bats before you really know if the guy's going to do it or not? So if he comes back and has a year this year like he did his first year, I think there's going to be some arrows up as opposed to the trajectory that's kind of been on its way down, because he teases all the tools.
Yeah.
The second name, let's watch.
Oh, hold on. We're about to see Vance real quick.
Yep. So this is one of his best tools. He's a freak defender.
Damn.
Have that, right?
Just an absolute robbery at the wall. Amazing.
Yeah, in a hoodie because it's cold. Because you're playing in February. Look at that.
Wow.
For those of you that watched it, it's in Pittsburgh. And so if you're listening and you didn't get to see it, you just Google Vance Honeycutt, Pittsburgh. The second guy on my list is Tommy Tanks White, who was at North Carolina State as a freshman, hitting tanks, 26 or 27 home runs, led the nation as a freshman. All of a sudden, he hits the transfer portal, ends up at LSU with another transfer guy named Paul Skeens. They join forces with Dylan Cruz. The rest is history. National champs. Now,
yeah, how'd that go?
You might recall this better than I do, but was there a game late in the season, like the College World Series or maybe right before it, where teams were pitching around tanks to get to Cruz? Because I believe that happened. I believe that happened in the College World Series where Tommy White was intentionally walked and then Dylan Cruz. No, that didn't happen.
I don't think so. And here's why I don't think that happened. I think that mostly Tommy White was hitting behind Cruz because I saw this ridiculous stat that was like Tommy White's triple slash line when Dylan Cruz wasn't on base versus when it was, and every single category jumped like 200-300 points when Dylan Cruz was on base. I think he was mostly protecting Cruz, but I could be wrong. Someone's going to correct us on that. Someone's going to have our number.
I hope so, because I feel like I wasn't able to watch the game, and instead I saw it in the Twitter feed. So we're going to see him. This is against Wake Forest.
The walk-off.
And he just crushed that.
Yeah,
maybe the greatest college baseball game ever.
Yeah, it was incredible.
So that was Skeens Louder, right?
Yeah.
And then who ends it? Tommy Tanks. He ends it. Now the question with him is, he doesn't have a great baseball body, right? And so, is he going to play third base? If he plays third base, he'll go top 5, maybe top 3. If there's not a belief that he can play third base and he has to go to first base or just be a DH. There's a little bit more risk there. So both guys that I took are, on the right day they look like 1-1s. On the wrong day they look like really good, maybe beer league guys, or double A guys. But you know what I mean? Like there's a wide range of outcomes.
I feel you for sure. One more quick thing, because I think something you touched on, and both your guys kind of brings this up. And Jeremy, you'll be pleased to know the 2024 consensus board is under construction.
Love it.
There's already like 50 names on it.
Send it to me so I can print it off.
Oh my God. One other notable thing, I think the Twins takes question here about demographics that I think we're going to see emerge. You pointed out that like nothing is solidified. It's all going to change. Agreed, 100%. One thing that is kind of true in this class early is there's a lot of the best prospects are like non-premium defensive positions. We got a lot of first basemen, a lot of second basemen. We do not have a lot of like center field shortstop types. And I think that was something that was super notable in the 2023 draft, especially with this incredible prep class. Was the prep shortstop class this year was insane. And just not a lot of kind of premium up the middle defenders outside of catcher. And we'll see if that kind of pans out.
You know what that tells me? That in a few years, like 3 years from now, this year's class, the 2023 class, that might move a little bit slower because it's those premium defensive positions with guys that have maybe a little more questionable bats, with the exception of the Dylan Cruzes. But when you talk about Walker Jenkins and you talk about Max Clark, and then you talk about some of these shortstops and prep guys and later guys, and then in 3 years from now, you've also added in the faster moving non-premium guys that are bat heavy, right? The guys that like the Tommy Whites, that in 3 years, when we talk about top 100 lists, there's going to be national writers saying this might be the best group of prospects ever, right? And right now the top, it's a weaker, the top of the top is weaker than it has been because there's been so many good rookies and so many good young players making that jump quicker. But I think there's going to be kind of a lull, which we're in the beginning of. And we're going to see in a couple of years, aside from these guys that are going to move really fast, I think we already know who those guys are. But you add in some of these next year's guys with the 2023 guys and some of the younger 2022 guys, and it's going to be a really fun year to watch, a couple years to see who floats to the top, because you're going to have another holiday to add into the mix. We're getting ahead of ourselves here.
No, 2025, Jesus.
Okay. You know what I mean? It's going to be super fun.
I do. I had not thought of that. Definitely an interesting point. Something else for us to track here over the next couple of years. Okay, I'm going to stick with the college theme here for my two guys, because these prep guys, their bodies aren't even going to look the same this time next year. But I'll give you a couple of prep names. Owen Payno, Derek Curiel, Connor Griffin, PJ Morlando might be the best prep prospect at the moment. He's kind of a first base outfielder type. He's a prep prospect out of South Carolina, committed to the University of South Carolina. If you want to see some batting practice, just Google PJ Morlando batting practice. He won, I think, the high school home run derby this year. It was ridiculous. Here's my two guys. My first guy is my favorite prospect in the entire draft class. I'm not sure it's going to change. JJ Weatherholt. He is a second baseman out of West Virginia. Last season, as a sophomore, he had 449, 517, 787, 16 home runs, 36 stolen bases. Doesn't walk a ton, just 11%, but only struck out 9% of the time. He is just like a really strong kind of four-tool guy, really excellent hitter. Played, I think, for collegiate Team USA recently. I think he is going to absolutely mash again this season. Really like his swing. Really nice prospect. Question is, where is he going to end up defensively? But a really good athlete. And I think if the draft was today, he'd be a top 10 guy for me for sure. The other one is I got to.
Does Theo hate Pittsburgh? He just hates Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's just Theo is just queuing up nonstop videos of Pittsburgh getting absolutely crushed, which is pretty funny. My last guy, just pure upside play, Brody Brecht, right-handed pitcher out of Iowa. I'm gonna. I don't even know if this is that crazy. His stuff is like Paul Skeens-ish, and we know that Paul Skeens just maybe had the best pitching season in college history. Nowhere near as polished, don't get me wrong, but just like pure stuff-wise, it's absolutely electric. Fastball up to 101 miles per hour. He has like a 90 mile per hour like demon slider. Iowa is definitely one of the college programs that kind of embraces analytics and kind of the Wake Forest like pitching lab type of approach. Brody Brecht, multi-sport athlete, only just stopped playing football. I think he was a receiver. 77 innings pitched last season, 3.74 ERA, which is a very respectable college ERA, I promise. 109 strikeouts in 77 innings. Like, what are we even talking about? Here's the problem. Here's the problem, dude. 67 walks in 77 innings. So we are approaching a walk per inning. Like, it's like 8 point something per 9. If he can like cut that in half, if he can do like 4.5, 5 walks per 9, he's going to be one of the first arms off the board. Stuff-wise, definitely the top college arm at the moment. Obviously, health depending. Brody Brecht, someone who is appointment viewing when he's pitching.
Can I ask you 2 questions about him?
Yes, sir.
One, how long will it take before there's the Jeff Samardzija comparison? Because if you're going to be a pitcher and a wide receiver, I feel like that has to be a
There
thing.
you go. There you go. Hey, we love comps on the show, man.
And you hate him, that's why I do it.
I do hate him.
and secondly, if he keeps walking people, but he can still throw 101 and a 90 mile an hour slider, you're talking about someone that is going to be a relief pitcher for sure. How much time do you give him before you just like okay, let's say this. The Angels are going to draft 14th. The Angels draft him, and the Angels immediately promote him to the majors, right?
Yes. They'll promote him in the
just
bullpen, though, because they're a nightmare.
But that's what he's going to be. I mean, he's going to be a reliever profile if he's walking that many people. And then how much time do you want to give him in the minors? He's throwing 101 miles an hour. His arm's not going to last forever. You might as well get him up, right?
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I think it really depends on who drafts him. I would want to give him as much of a chance. You know what I'm looking for this year, man? I'm looking for progress. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for, can you show an improved ability to throw strikes and control, not necessarily even command, because I don't think he really needs to at this level, especially. I'm looking for improvement this year. Depending on who drafts him, I think it would behoove you to give him an opportunity to start, because you do not get that type of arm talent. It does not just like grow on trees, especially as a starter. So we're putting the cart ahead of the horse here, because is it going to have a healthy season? There's so many questions. I just think like if you are getting interested in the draft process, getting interested in college baseball, which is incredibly fun, watch every Brody Brecht start, because it's going to be entertaining one way or another. I'm going to give him every opportunity to start I possibly can, but I feel you, depending on the organization, reliever risk is absolutely something that has to be spoken about.
All right, so moving to the next part. Are there any teams that are looking really strong as we anticipate the college season in 2024, and who are especially relevant for the draft?
For sure. I'll highlight just a couple of notable like transfers here. Quick overarching point, I think, is like the transfer portal has really thrown a grenade into college baseball, especially. You brought up Tommy White, who transferred last season. I mean, it has been nonstop since the end of the college season. I think in terms of strong teams, Wake Forest is going to be really good again. We brought up the early version of the consensus board. They've got 3 guys already in the top 30 names. Nick Kurtz, who's a slugging first, kind of the first base equivalent of Brock Wilken, left-handed, absolute masher. They have Chase Burns, who just transferred from Tennessee, who both started and relieved last season and throws 101 fastball. Reliever risk there too, I would say. And then they also have a really intriguing shortstop prospect named Seaver King, which is automatically in the running for the all-name team for the 2024 draft for me. So Wake Forest, absolutely incredible. 2 more notable transfers of prospects I would track. Braden Montgomery, outfield prospect, transfer from Stanford to Texas A&M. He's a first-round talent worth keeping tabs on. And then Tennessee also benefited from the portal this year. And I'm mostly repping this guy because of his name, because I don't think he's draft eligible until 2025. But Cannon Peebles. How about Cannon Peebles as a name for a catcher?
Well, he has to play catcher or pitcher.
Cannon Peebles. He's a switch-hitting catcher transferred from North Carolina State to Tennessee. I believe he was a freshman last year, so not going to be – I don't think he's draft eligible. I should really know that. I'll find that out. But Wake Forest, absolutely a team to keep an eye on. How about for you, man?
Yeah, Wake Forest is because they're the closest thing to LSU, right? They're just going to have all these prospects. And they were the best team in the regular season this past year. And so that to me is fun. And as a former Twin fan who watched Wes Johnson come from college and bail and go back to college and now going – I mean, he was partially responsible for the development of Paul Skeens, and now he's going to be the head guy at Georgia. And, looking at the Georgia roster, it's not great, but Wes Johnson, I mean, nationally, there was people that said he might be the greatest pitching coach ever, which I think is nuts. But in the SEC, you give him a whole team, you give him the keys to everything. I'm looking forward to seeing what Georgia can become under his leadership, even though he bailed on the Twins mid-season. It's that one's a fun one for me.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great pick. Definitely add some juice to the SEC. Georgia does have one incredible hitting prospect, Charlie Condon. Keep an eye out for him. We will talk about him when we get up and running and into the 2024 draft cycle. So that's kind of the high-level overview. Weaker class. We'll get so much more into the weeds on this, and we'll kind of update this conversation, and all of the usual caveats apply. That was probably a huge waste of time, but it was fun. Last but not least, a couple of news and notes, and then we'll get out of here. Jeremy, Matt Shaw. Speaking of 2023 notable draft prospects, Matt Shaw, the Cubs' first-round selection, has been promoted. I think you called this last week. Did you call this? You said he should be at AA already. I think you said it in the episode last week.
I've said this on every episode. Matt Shaw was my favorite. He was my favorite shortstop prospect or infield prospect. And so it doesn't shock me when you look at, like we've talked about too, there's less teams. There's just less stuff going on. There's less spots. And if you are better than the roster that you're on and the league that you're in, you just have to be promoted. And he was better immediately. And so getting up to AA, I think makes a lot of sense because next year, that's probably where he should start. You give him a 100%. Spring training invite. You let him do all of that stuff. The reality is Swanson's in front of him for a handful of years. So get him to AA, see how his bat works, and then, look at where else he could maybe benefit the Cubs. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's knocking on the door and getting promoted to play at Wrigley, by the All-Star break next year. Maybe that's aggressive, but I think that if they need help somewhere in the infield, he offers those types of skills that he will fit, and the Cubs might need that. Probably not at shortstop, but I think that Matt Shaw can certainly help check some boxes for a team that may be in need of a hitter and an exciting ball player too.
Yep. Agree with all of that. The as of 2023 exciting Chicago Cubs. You love to see it. Next guy we're going to highlight, and then we're going to throw in one more as a bonus. Luke Keaschall, Minnesota Twins draftee, promoted to high A. Man, he's seen 3 levels already since he was drafted. Any thoughts on Keaschall and his start in the Twins organization?
Well, yeah, I'll just say a little bit, but then I'm more curious to hear your thought because you were much higher on him. To me, he was that utility type guy that they drafted, and I'm like, well, I feel like they have those, and so to see him get promoted the first time, that's not a surprise. He's a college guy. He shouldn't have been in that.
For sure.
It's the same complex, right? You're just playing at a different time. And
Right.
so that one didn't really surprise me. This one, it does a little bit because it's moving up to a team that's going to play in the playoffs. And that's great that he's going to get that opportunity. But I didn't see this one happening because now he's going to start at high A, potentially double A. And I haven't looked this week to see where he's played for Cedar Rapids because he did play a little bit in the outfield, right, for Fort Myers, played a little bit of center field. And so, is there some ability to move around? I know the Twins value that, and he may be within 2 years of being in the big leagues.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts? Because you were a big fan of him in college.
I was a big fan of him. I think I'm just trying to find my notes on him, man. Just all of a sudden disappeared. I tweeted in like late May that he felt like a Twinsy target, and like the Tanner Schobel comparison is kind of obvious, but it is also relevant, right? Like he is a guy who he transferred from the University of San Francisco to Arizona State. Gotta get my Arizonas right.
Yep,
and he had a big power outbreak. Schobel had a big power outbreak in his last season at Virginia Tech. And like opinion wasn't like split on Keaschall. Like I think I tweeted this out earlier this week, but he was drafted at 49th overall by the Twins, and he was 61st on the consensus board. So there were some people higher, obviously, some people lower on him. But I really liked him as a versatile. I do think he's going to be somewhere on the dirt, most likely second base long term. But he does a little bit of everything well, and it does not surprise me that he's seeing his third level. I think they'll start him at high A next year, and kind of see how things go, and he'll follow a similar path to Schobel. I liked Keaschall a ton as a prospect. I know that he wasn't kind of the wow factor right after Walker Jenkins and Charlie Soto, but you cannot ask for a better start than what he's put up in 3 levels so far for the Twins. Last guy, we're gonna do a bonus guy. Got to bring this up because this is like hot off the press, man. David Festa, AAA debut tonight with the St. Paul Saints, with like kind of an unfair St. Paul Saints lineup that had Byron Buxton and Alex Kirilloff in it. Pitched 5 innings, gave up 4 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, and 7 Ks in his AAA debut through something like 95 pitches, 17 swings and misses per our friend Tom Froming. What do you make of Festa's ascent this year as a final guy?
So Festa, he started off really well, right? I mean, he was looking really, really good early. And then he went through a stretch. I'm trying to find that where it was, where he just wasn't great. I think mid-June, 4 earned runs, 3 earned runs in 5 innings, 3 earned runs in 4 innings. Then had a bunch of short outings in July, 2 innings, 3 innings, like kind of a build-up. End of July, he goes 2.2, gives up 6 hits, 6 runs, 2 home runs, and then another 3.1 and 2. And I'm like, you know what? maybe we need to pump the brakes on this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes back. He makes a 5-inning start on August 13th. He gives up 1 run on 3 hits and 5 innings, strikes out 4. Because the strikeout numbers really kind of went down too.
Yep.
And then on the 13th, 5 innings, the 23rd, 5 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 7 strikeouts. And it's like, okay, at least he's going to, in my mind, at least he's going to end the season at AA having success.
Mm-hmm.
And then a promotion. And now tonight, 5 innings, 7 strikeouts, one hit, or 4 hits, 1 run, which was a home run, and 1 walk. That's pretty good. Like,
Pretty good.
He's thrown a ton of innings this year. 85. He threw 103 last year. So there's still some bullets left in the tank. As the Twins need bullpen help, and tomorrow's going to be an interesting day from the waiver perspective. Is there a chance that he gets a look? Rosters are expanding. They can run the shuttle.
No way.
Right? You say no way.
No way. No way. Now, I don't hate the idea. I like the aggressiveness, and I know you're a fan of that too. But I just think like Varland is going to be the guy if they're going to do that, in my opinion. Chris Paddock's coming back. Ober is, I don't know, taking a rest before coming back onto the roster. They've got this waiver madness. Buxton and Kirilloff and Willie Keaschall need to come back. The Twins, I don't think are going to have space, but I dig the aggressiveness and the creativity. And the one thing I want to say about David Festa is this. He was a 13th round pick, 399th overall. $125,000 bonus. And now is throwing 96 miles an hour in AAA, and the Twins look like they have another at least promising starting pitching prospect who is probably going to debut next year. So that's a note to everyone to pay attention to your team's entire draft class, because you never know who's going to pop.
Okay, I do want to say this because I'm not suggesting that David Festa should have a bullpen spot for the whole month of September. But you have Cole Sands right there. You have Josh Winder right now.
True.
And so when a guy throws, instead of leaving him on the roster, you can send him down. When you have 6, 7, 8 options. Now, Paddock you can't really do, but Varland you could. And so they just have to be on the 40-man, which to be postseason eligible, I'm just thinking you can run a shuttle with these guys. If they're not in the minors for 20 days, the option doesn't even count. If you're going to bring him up to add him to the 40, and I should look to see if he's due, it wouldn't hurt to get him up, even if he's your long guy, right? Until someone else is ready or back. I just think there's manipulation, legal manipulation of the roster. And if he pitches really well in St. Paul and they need a long guy, why wouldn't you? And give him a shot, because he throws some gas, and in short spurts, it could be fun. But yeah, I don't know. You guys are probably both right. Theo's down here telling me I'm an idiot.
He's abusing you in the chat. Yeah, I'm gonna wait and see what he does with his next start. By the way, how fun is that St. Paul Saints team? Byron Buxton, Alex Kirilloff, Brooks Lee, just a ton of fun players there.
Kyle
right now.
Garlick, don't forget Kyle Garlick.
All right, that's enough. It is time to call it a day for episode 3. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for checking us out. Send us some feedback. We'd appreciate if you leave us a positive review on iTunes or Spotify. Help us spread the word, help us grow. As always, a huge thank you to producer Theo behind the scenes for making everything run smoothly as always. Until next time, Jeremy, see you next week, man.